Tanoj, can you start? Okay,
yes.
Actually, I'm going to start. I wanted to make you co-host. There is a problem with my screen. I don't know. Anyway, without wasting much time, I'm going to start the session. Okay, Sanoj, I'll proceed with you.
Okay, madam. Okay, madam.
Good morning, everyone. Actually, within 1 week, I think, we organized this webinar. Without wasting much time, good morning to everyone. And I think you will enjoy this webinar on impacts of river sand mining on water security of Sri Lanka. Therefore, I'm going to invite Professor Vasantha Seneviratne, our head of the Department of Export Agriculture, to deliver you the welcome speech. Over to you, Professor Vasantha.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Nisansala. Very good morning to all of you. And am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Yes.
Okay, right. Very good morning to all of you. And Dean of the Faculty of Animal Science and Export Agriculture, Uvalas University, the Professor Saman Herath, and all distinguished speakers and invitees for today's webinar. Ms. Nisansala Vitanage, the senior lecturer, who is the moderator of this webinar, and all the staff members of the Uvalas University who are joining to this event, and members of the Aqua Club and Agro Club, Uvalas University, and all the participants and my dear students. First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to welcome you all at this important webinar on impact of sand mining on water security of Sri Lanka. With the collaboration of network of women water professionals under the program Jala Yatra, which is a timely important topic at the present context. And our team of eminent speakers will elaborate this
Start the recording
within the next 2 hours. So I am not going to talk about the topic. With a great pleasure, first I warmly welcome our Dean of the Faculty.
Recording in progress.
For Agriculture, Professor Saman Herath, for this event. And also my great pleasure to welcome all the other speakers, the resource personnel for today's workshop, Dr. Misaka Hetty Arachi from Worldwide Fund, United States, Mr. Kanchana Karunaratne from Marston Jacob Associate Australia, Ms. Kusum Atukorala from Network of Women Water Professionals, and Ms. Mudita Priyanvada from Construction Industry Development Authority, and Ms. Nilmini Sanchivani, Center for Environmental Justice. Your presence as resource personnel gives a great value to this event. You all are welcome to this event. Then all the staff members of the Uvalas University who are joining to this event, and the officials of Aqua Club and Agro Club of the Uvalas University, and all the students and participants for this webinar, you all are warmly welcome to this gathering. I believe that this is a great opportunity for undergraduates to expose to the real world problems on our environment, especially the water security, which is really, really important in anywhere in the world today, and even in the future. Okay, right, without taking much time, I take this opportunity to wish you all for a successful session on this timely important topic today within next 2 hours. And have a nice day. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Professor Vasantha, thank you very much for your welcome speech. And it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome and invite Professor Saman Herath to deliver a kind of introductory speech to this webinar. Over to you, sir.
So excuse me, sir. Sir. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sir.
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, sir. We can hear you,
Yeah.
sir.
Very good morning, everybody. And yeah, distinguished invitees, my dear colleagues and the speakers, and also more importantly, dear students. So I hope this will be a great event and great opportunity for one thing to share the expertise knowledge on the title given, and also for our students to learn something more in the area, right? Therefore, I appreciate the opportunity at the beginning given to me to share my thoughts. Actually, I just want to wish you all to carry on this webinar. And I hope that it will be more productive and fruitful at the end of the session. And I take this opportunity again to welcome you all for the university and also for the Faculty of Animal Science and Export Agriculture. And I appreciate the efforts made by Mrs. Nisansala Vitanage and the team during a very limited time period. You wanted to organize this workshop or this webinar. So I think now we have come to this with the efforts you made there. The title is actually the impact of sand mining on water security of Sri Lanka. So for me, there are two important key words there. One is sand mining. The other thing is water security. So if you take these two separately, so you may find different ideas, different facts and figures, and so much of information. But the thing is, when you link this, so that is the, of course, I mean, that we should learn, that we should think of nowadays, right? For example, I have to say, I mean, if you just go along this Randanigal road, I mean, we can remember that we have met hundreds of trucks passing us, taking huge amount of sand from Mahavali River. So when they pass, actually, what I got into my mind is, because it says that we are doing a huge disturbance to our environment. So we have to think in that way. I was just looking into the figures, I mean, all over the world, and I could find that, I mean, for example, 40 billion tons of sand plus gravel is used for the constructions plus other purposes all over the world per annum. This is, of course, a huge amount. So it says that how much of anthropogenic effects are there and how much of this, I mean, the middleman or the engagement of people in this environmental disturbance. So these are certain things that we have to think of nowadays. For example, if you take 10,000, 12,000 years ago, people were mostly in the jungle and they were just doing hunting and gathering. They had very limited number of needs. Of course, maybe food and some place to just to stay. But over the time, what we can see is all these needs have been complicated. And people have so much of needs and they just want to, they are not satisfied, of course. Therefore, they keep doing and they keep involving, and ultimately what happens to the environment is now obvious, and that has to be discussed. And we have to take some precautions, we have to take some measures to control at least at this level. Otherwise, yeah, we'll be in a trouble definitely in the next couple of decades. So over the last few decades, if you take 2 to 3 decades, you can see how much of changes happened to this environment because of these, I mean, anthropogenic effects. Therefore, I think this title will be very important. So we just want to see how actually the sand mining impacts on the water security. When you talk about water security, actually what we get into our mind is mostly, I mean, maybe 2 to 3 decades ago, especially, we were talking about Africa maybe, but the scenario, these impacts have now, I mean, extended to the Asia, even to Sri Lanka. We have to think of that. But here, the case is different. We are trying to, I mean, link between the effects or the impacts of the sand mining and water security. Water is very important because without water, we cannot survive. Therefore, we should have some methods, we should have some protocols. We should have some actions to secure definitely water for the future. Otherwise, the human being and all other animals, plants will be in trouble. Therefore, I will not take that much time because it's time for the speakers to deliver their speeches and share their thoughts. So at the end, I again appreciate the effort and also the organization made by Mrs. Nisansala and the team. And also I appreciate the participation of all the speakers, and you all are welcome to the OLS University. Maybe this would be the first time that you're coming here, I mean, at least virtually, to meet us. Thank you very much taking this opportunity and coming with us. And I wish you all the best for everybody. Thank you very much. I remain here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saman sir, for your inspirational speech. Now it's time for an introduction speech by Ms. Kusum Mattukorala. He's the overall coordinator of this webinar and the backbone of this webinar. I must appreciate her efforts made in different ways. And Ms. Kusum is the founder and present chair of the Network of Women Water Professionals. Now, Ms. Kusum, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dean, Head of Department, and Nisansala. I would like to, I'm sorry, this is not my presentation. This is, please, this is not my presentation.
My apologies, madam.
I think the other one.
Yeah, basically give me, as you very rightly said, this is the first time I have seen the Uavellasa even virtually, in spite of having taught 10 years in university and of course being a student here in Sri Lanka myself as an undergraduate. I think that first let me, I'm very happy to see the students. But I also have to tell you that I'm very sorry for you because you have had to undergo this terrible experience of, being cooped up in your homes, and not having the interesting intellectual ferment which should sort of come with being a student in a university. But given that we have to cope, I think this is a sort of a best that we can do secondhand. Let me sort of tell you how this happened. We are a part of a global network called the Women for Water Partnership, and we have had a plan for a conference called Women, Water and Climate Change, Tackling the Challenges. You will be getting all this information, and I think you'll find it very interesting, which is to do with the SDGs. Now, after years of preparation and countless discussions, acrimonious at some times, our world came together to adopt the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Agreement. And you know that this is being highly contested at the current moment before the Glasgow COP. It is a milestone achievement for humanity and the planet, but how the outcomes are going to be operationalized is another issue. It has become a lot of a big drama on epic scale, and the players are science, bureaucracy, community, and politicians. And bringing these people together into a happy ending with huge human effort is going to be difficult. But let me also start up by saying that, we have the SDGs, but we sometimes try to think of it in isolation. But these SDGs are connected, and whatever we do is connected to 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 of these SDGs. Our rivers are in crisis for for many reasons, including water pollution, but river sand mining stands way above everything else in damaging the water security, creating climate, community, agriculture, and community impacts, which are being felt by our people, especially during the lockdown, because during the lockdown, everybody is inside and, they cannot even come up and state their case. But the water is going, it's coming in my session. I will not talk about it now. But I do want to bring your attention to the Lancet Planetary Health scientific journal. You all know the Lancet, which has done a study of 10,000 people, and 75,000 of the young people think that their future is frightening. And 45% say that climate change is negatively impacting their day. Climate anxiety has become a word for young people because you will have to deal with the problems that your elders like ourselves created. So I'm very glad that we get this opportunity to at least bring this one issue on which we have, I think right now we have 145 people. We were expecting 300 really, where 300 people will become influencers about sand mining, influencers about water security. Influencers are not people with green and purple hair. It is people like you who go to the community and look at their problems and help them to come to solutions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kusum. Sanoj, I think you can take the lead of this webinar hereafter. And before that, I would like to tell the audience, actually, you may have definitely so many questions. You better put your questions in the chat. And at the end, we'll, in the Q&A session, we'll discuss all of those questions, except Dr. Misaka's questions. Just after his presentation, we'll discuss the questions related to his presentation. Over to you, Sanoj. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, madam. I hope I'm audible. So as Ms. Kusum said, let's be influencers and let's get to business. So first of all, let me invite Dr. Misaka Hettiarachchi. Now, we as human beings, we get water from the taps. So we don't know, we don't feel how insecure this resource is. But there's another sector, there's another set of let's say, beings who gets affected by this even more than us. So Dr. Misaka is from the World Wildlife Fund. So doctor, it's up to you.
Thank you very much, Sanoj. Yeah, and I really like the transition or the segue you provided me, giving that example that we all now see water in the tap and we have no idea where it comes from. As soon as if water comes when we open the tap, we are happy. Right? This reminds me of a cartoon I saw long time back, probably about 20 years back, when there were huge farmer protests in Europe, and there was this cartoon which unfortunately I am searching for it forever, like since I couldn't never find it again. But there was a father and a kid, like a son, watching TV on the lobby, and then in the TV the farmer protests are going on, and the kid asks the father, why are they protesting? And the father says, oh, they are farmers. So then the kid again asks, so why are they protesting? And they said, the father says they can't grow their food. And then kid looks like startled and asks, oh, why can't they just buy it in the supermarket like we do? So this is the same thing, that same mentality that we all, even the elders, have about water. As long as it comes in the tap, we don't care. We are ready to forget the entire water cycle. Okay, so without further delay, I will, let me just time myself because I'm very good at going beyond my time normally. Yeah, here we go. So let me get the video on. Right, so in the first lecture, I think
did we lose Dr. Misaka? Or?
Sanoj, I think
I
lost
think,
him. Maybe a technical problem.
yes, madam. I think the doctor lost his connection, madam.
Sorry. No, I
Okay.
dropped out. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay,
Some technical issue. Sorry about it. No, let me get the. Oh, I need to share my screen.
yes, doctor.
Sanj. Yeah. It says the host has disabled.
Screen sharing, right, sir?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Just give me 1 minute, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Sanoj, you have the ability now.
Yeah.
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
So while I'm setting it up, as I said, this is I think the second or the third time that we are doing a water and IWRM like in connect workshop. We are talking about these two major issues together. So as Professor Herat said, there's enough information and investigations going into these two subject areas separately, but the uniqueness comes when we bring those together, right? So let me try to give you the main concepts here. I'm not going into the details, the detailed information, the facts and figures, because I'm pretty sure the presenters after me will do that, and they can do that much better than I. So I'll be covering the basic concepts, and I'll try to do it as succinctly and interestingly as possible. I know it's not an easy task to sit through again another couple of hours of death by Zoom these days, like in the era of lockdown. Anyway, let's go into business. So sand mining as an issue in water management, right? So let's start with water. What is the water crisis? Why do we call it a crisis, right? Why do we, in the first place, like why do we need water management, right? I hope all of you can see the screen.
Yes,
Yeah,
doctor,
okay.
we can. Yes.
So we need to manage something if there's a problem in it, right? If something self-manages, we don't, and there's no problem in it, we don't have to bother, we don't have to put our resources into managing it, because management necessarily needs resources, right? So normally we step in to manage something when there is a problem, and moreover, when there is a crisis. Now, in the case of water, there is a huge crisis, right? Why? Like, this is how the water manages itself, like on the planet Earth. Now, this had been going on for the planet Earth is about 4 billion, roughly about 4 billion years old. I don't know, I can't really remember around which time water really came into the picture, but so for so many billions of years, slowly, of course, this has changed, evolved over time. But we all know from O-level classes, water goes in a cycle through Earth's surface and the atmosphere, right? Surface is also, you get surface water on the land, right? Land water sources, groundwater sources, as well as the ocean. And then it evaporates. The biggest repository of water in the world is the atmosphere, right? And then from there, we receive the water back as snow, hail, or rain. So pretty much for so many, in the least, like so many millions of years, of course, the quantity of water has changed a little bit over time, but in the recent past, like recent millions of years, the quantity of water in the Earth system, ecosystem, has been constant. We calculate this amount of fresh water available, right? Like the water that we could use as humans, right? To be about 8 million cubic kilometers, right? It's not a small amount, but it is still limited, right? Now, although this amount of water which is available for humans is constant, the users, the contenders for this limited amount of water keeps increasing, as we know. In 1950, there was only about 3 billion people in the world, and now there are, I think it's about nearly 8 million, right? So the amount of water or the quantity of water available is limited. The contenders for it, the users for it, right? It keeps increasing. Now, this not only includes humans, but there are other competitors for water with us, like the ecosystems. And then this is the first aspect of the water crisis. The second aspect is it's because of human actions, especially human actions, the amount of water available for humans doesn't stay anymore constant. Right? It keeps decreasing as well. Right? Like in some places, the groundwater level goes down. In some places, we divert rivers, so certain areas get less water. So the available fresh water in the world altogether might be reducing to a certain extent. But more importantly, in certain localities, certain regions, the water available is going down. So the competitors number of users are increasing, the available quantity is decreasing. This is the second aspect of the water crisis. The third aspect, the water bodies, not only they are decreasing, but they are becoming polluted, toxic, and repulsive. This is a picture that which is a little bit like embarrassing, but I use it all the time. If you see the circle, you can understand what is going on here, right? It's a nicely built lavatory, but discharging directly into a water body. And over time, these water bodies become a health hazard. So people not only now can't have the amount of water they need, but they have to run away from water now, right? Because it has become toxic and repulsive. Fourth aspect of the water crisis is water-related disasters. There is an increase in water-related disaster events, what we call hydrometeorological or hydromet disasters because of climate change. But that's not only the issue, right? There is an increase in disaster events due to pollution and degradation. As you can see in the picture, this is the devastating Samasara Kanda landslide, where hundreds of almost 100 people lost their lives, unfortunately. Now, this is a combination of both factors, 1 and 2. It was, of course, driven by a major storm, high-intensity storm, which would have had an impact. Sorry, would have had an influence of climate change, right? But also, when the post-disaster investigations were done, it was realized that this area has undergone massive deforestation during the last few years. So that was one of the reasons. But also there's another factor, increase in numbers of people affected due to changes in population patterns and density. Now, when a disaster strikes, because of the increased population, there is an additional amount of casualties, and the impacts are higher because of that. So because of these three factors, the water-related disasters have become very prominent, right? Like a factor in the water equation these days. Right. So with this, I will try to condense these 4 aspects of the water crisis into a metaphor. Now, if you think of the water crisis as an ice cube, right? With any cube has 6 sides, right? Now, if we put the ice cube in the water, right? So what we see, if you look through a glass, what we see is these 4 aspects of the water crisis, right? And it will float on in the water, right? Now, when we see these 4 aspects of the water crisis, we try to apply technical solutions. We try to build dams, we try to give water to people through laying pipelines, and bottled water, so many technical solutions. But what we don't see is there's another surface beneath the ice cube where the social and environmental issues are acting as an upward force. So however much you may try to put the water crisis down, like bury it using technical solutions, the social and environmental issues will come up and push the ice cube back to the surface, resurfacing the water crisis. So we have to pay very careful attention to the social environmental issues that the water crisis is causing if we want to start managing water. Now, this is where the principles of integrated water management comes in. It sees water as in three components: water for people, water for food and industry, and importantly, water for nature. In most cases, we only think about providing water for people and food and industry. Sometimes only industry and agriculture, sometimes water for people also gets into the backseat, right? Now, in 1992, following the famous Rio Earth Summit, United Nations Conference for Environment and Development, right? There was another summit in Dublin, which was mainly focusing on the water management aspects, what we call the integrated water resources management. So this Dublin conference came up with 4 important principles of managing water. Number 1, water is a finite and vulnerable resource, which is essential for both sustainability of natural ecosystems and human activities. This is what we were talking about, like in the last few slides, right? It is a finite and vulnerable resource. Number 2, water is a public good. Therefore, all water-related decisions should be taken in a participatory way. So, water is publicly owned. I think the word nowadays, if they formulated these principles now, they would have put it as a common property resource, but this was some time back. So, water is commonly owned, right? But there is a rival competition for it, right? So, because of that, water problems regarding water, issues regarding water should be always managed in a participatory way with the community participation. I think Kusum Madam would be able to explain the participatory engagement or participatory management later in the discussions. Third, women play a central role in water, right? Because most of the activities, human activities related to water are actually, like use of water, are actually led by women. Even in a household, if you take, like most of the activities, it's actually exerted upon women. Not that it should be that way, but cooking, washing, and all that. But unfortunately, in water-related decision making, they are not given the equal opportunity to participate in those decisions. So we have to keep in mind women play a central role in water. They are equal position or the proportionate position to what they do, related to water, have to be taken into account in making water-related decisions. Number 4, water has an economic value as well as a social value. So the idea of this principle is to emphasize that value of water is not just economic. Like, there is an economic value, it's extremely important to account for that, but there is a social value as well. If we forget that, that would lead to social issues. Okay, so let me leave the water issue there and come into sand. Now, why we are talking about sand here? Now, Professor Herath very amply mentioned like how the water problem, the sand problem, it's apparent, right? We see it all the day, and of course, sorry, all the time, and of course, all of you would be familiar to a certain extent the gravity of the problem, and I think in the next few presentations, examples would be given, so I won't go into that. But let's understand what is sand, right? Sand, we tend to think that it is this river sand, what we see in the construction site. That is the only type of sand we get. No, it is anything, any granular hard material which has a particle size between 0.05 to 2 millimeters, we consider it as sand. Most of sand, of course, is silica based, but it doesn't have to be that. Like as you can see in the pictures below, right? There are many different types of sand, such as volcanic sand, coral sand, and so on. How does sand come into being? Right? It is an environmental flow, just like water. It originates in a watershed, right? Mainly sand is formed in the upper watershed by withering of rocks, and then it reaches the middle and lower watershed, and it is responsible for creating most of the geographical features in middle and lower watersheds that we know of as beaches, wetlands, oxbow lakes, ridges, and all that. Right? So sand is an extremely important material in nature. It's not only useful for building our houses, right? So altering the sediment flow can affect other components of ecosystem. Altering the sand, this flow in an ecosystem, in a watershed, like in the same way, if we take too much water from a system that degrades that system, the same thing happens if we take too much sand out of that system. It's a natural flow in the system, so the system gets degraded. So there is a sustainable rate of extraction. Now, to give an idea of how the sand issue comes up, right? Like how it really manifests, right? In other environmental and social sectors. This is a diagram of cause and this is a cause and effect diagram, right? Of impacts of river, especially river sand mining, right? As you can see, initially it causes few very directly observable issues like deepening of rivers and bank erosion, destruction of sediment flow, a reduction of sediment flow, and so on, right? But then if you go into secondary, if you look more deeper, there are secondary issues. It can cause groundwater drawdown, deepening of rivers, right? When the river levels go down, the adjoining groundwater comes into the river and it reduces the groundwater in the adjoining areas, right? It can cause salinity intrusion, right? Now, this would again be discussed later. When the river beds are deepened, saline water from the sea comes into the rivers, right? And so the river water becomes saline, and this is a huge problem for agriculture, for water supply, and so on. Now, these are, if you think in the terms of the water crisis, now you will see, now sand mining actually causes it manifests as the second aspect, right, of the water crisis. The amount of water available with groundwater drawdown, salinity intrusion, and so on, the amount of water available for a growing population of humans is happening, right, because of sand extraction, right? So this actually corresponds to the first principle or the first aspect of the water crisis that I mentioned. Now, if we take an issue like bank erosion, right, that leads to land loss and degradation, right? Because when the banks erode, it cuts into the land and it eats away the land that people are doing, agriculture or having their houses and so on. Now that is a disaster, right? It becomes a water-related disaster. So now the sand problem now is converted into a water-related disaster. Finally, all these things cause social ecological impacts. Now we know how much social anger is there about the sand issue. Every year we see protests happening, people getting into clashes, people being murdered, right? Because of the sand issue. Mostly those problems, social and ecological impacts, actually come as water-related issues. not directly sand related issues, right? It's either bank erosion, land degradation, groundwater drawdown. These are the things which are actually causing the social ecological impacts, right? So it totally now corresponds to the water crisis, the water crisis cube metaphor that we explained. How much ever we try to solve these problems by doing this technical solution or that technical solution, the underlying social ecological impacts come up and bring the problem back. Okay, to finish, what are a few pointers, right, towards the integrated sand management? A few starting thoughts. These are not established principles, right? Few starting thoughts. One, sand is a flow, right? So water stakeholders should take up the sand issue, right? So sand is not just a stationary mineral as we would like to think of it. It's a flow, and it should be managed in a way that water is managed. So water stakeholders like the communities, the water-related government agencies, the water-related NGOs, they should take up the matter of sand into their hands. Number two, value sand socially and culturally, not only economically, right? Just like water, sand has to be valued culturally and socially, right? And not just think of it as cubic meters of or tons that you can buy in the hardware store, right? Number three, sand democracy. Give communities a place in sand. So just like the water principle on participatory management, give communities a voice in sand management, especially in issuing permits where the water permits are issued. That is the main contending point in sand management. Right? Finally, national watershed and community scale planning for sand management. It's not only just sand management is not just a local issue. That's how it is managed right now. When somebody is sand mining somewhere, people protest, and then the politicians go, NGOs go. You try to you bring in lawsuits, and you try to solve it there. Unfortunately, it emerges in another place. Like that's what happened when it first started in Kalani. People started acting. Then it went to Mao and Dadruoya, right? When there were action against that, now it has. Then it went to Nilwala, right? And now most of the sand is coming from Mahavali River. So it just shifts places, doesn't solve the problem unless we take it upon all these scales: national, watershed, and community scale plan. Okay, I won't take more time than that. I have already taken a little bit more time than I'm allocated. So finally, I would leave you with a closing thought. Only way that these kind of diverging problems, or wicked problems as we call it, like the problems that are just that keep expanding all the time, right, rather than converging, only way that we could act upon, manage these problems are by thinking universally, think as wide as possible, but act locally, right? Think universally and act locally, and think of every problem as a microcosm of all the environmental problems in the world, right? So this I would, with this I would leave you with this beautiful saying, like which comes from a poem of Rumi, who is a Iranian or a Parsi poet from 13th century. You are not a drop in the ocean, but the entire ocean in one drop. So each one of us, each problem that we encounter is a microcosm of all the problems in the world, just condensed into one small thing, right? So in every problem, we see the connections of every other issue in the world. So start thinking like that. Don't be tunnel vision or narrow-minded. Think universally and act locally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Misaka. So exactly, think globally and act locally with all the knowledge from we can find from the world, and then imply to our problems and make it better for everyone. So now we have a question for you, Dr. Misaka. So Sonali Adhikari has asked, it's clear to us that sand mining do impact on water crisis in certain ways. Does sand mining directly impact water crisis in our country?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, thanks for raising that question, Sonali. I think it will be more, you will realize it more with the next few presentations. Like one example that I can give is, now if I just explain it with an example that's closer to our heart, right? Like as Sanod said in the when the opening when he was opening the floor, right? Like we think of water as something coming in the tap, right? So the sand crisis has actually impacted, right? It's affecting our ability to get water in our taps. Like one example was, I can't remember the exact year, but within the last 4 to 5 years, there was a time that Ambatale water supply plant, right? Ambatale water intake and purification plant, which supplies, I think, roughly about 60% of water in Colombo, had to totally shut down. So whole of Colombo, most of Colombo in the least, suddenly went out of water, right? The reason was the salinity level in the Kalani River was exceeding the level that the plant can handle, because our water treatment plants, that the technology that we use probably anywhere in the world, are not geared to handle or treat saline water, right? If we want to treat saline water, we have to go for probably as agriculture and food students, some of you would know, we have to use reverse osmosis plants, which is extremely expensive, right? So when saline water comes into a system, the water supply, the suppliers have no other option than to shut down their plants. Right? So I think about
now go on to the next, otherwise we are losing time.
2 or 3 minutes.
To the clip.
2 or 3 minutes. Sorry, 2 or 3 days we went without water.
Yeah. Go to the clip. It's already gone too much.
Madam.
Misaka, thank you very much. I think that's a very good foundation for the thinking. Think of this as, something like a think fest. Here we are not giving you all the solutions, but putting you in a position, undergraduates who are going to do a lot of work, because basically it's your future. Can I now ask Ms. Nisansala to play the video clip from the Australian High Commission, and while you're getting on to it, let me explain how this happened. As an Australian alumna myself, I was very glad to get 1 minute, please. Australian small grants, giving me the opportunity to expand the river sand mining debate to a wider audience. And the High Commission in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, has been kind enough to give us a supportive video, and let us thank the High Commission and the Australian people for their kindness, and listen to this. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Ayubowan, Vanakkam, Assalamu alaikum. A warm welcome to all of you attending this webinar today. I'm very pleased to welcome you to this series of webinars organised for Jala, Yatra or Water Journey, an awareness building outreach program to improve climate resilience through water and food security. I'm also happy to note this Water Journey is one of the Australia Awards small grants projects focused on community engagement and communication in climate security during the pandemic. Water and food security are inextricably linked with climate resilience. The water cycle and food chains are critical elements of our quest to achieve a system that robustly incorporates climate security. Increasingly severe and frequent drought and floods are impacting the system, creating a range of hardships, including reducing food reserves. climate-induced changes to water availability and food supply, as well as the physical impacts of flood and drought, present risks to human health, food security, habitation, and livelihoods. Partnerships for Recovery, Australia's COVID-19 development policy, identifies the importance of climate resilience for stability and long-term economic recovery during and after the pandemic. Water and food security are critical if we are to build resilient post-COVID communities. Australia's Climate Change Action Strategy 2020-2025 reiterates these policy affirmations and supports community adaptation to achieve food and water security and sustainable agricultural and fishing systems in several regions, including South and Southeast Asia. Clean and safe water and accessibility to supply chains for everyone in the community plays a critical role in addressing poverty and contributing to economic and human development. Cohesive, equitable communities are more resilient, including to shocks from our changing climate or from disease outbreaks. I therefore appreciate the value add of this series of webinars and the work being done to build awareness of the importance of water and food security in building societies better equipped for climate change adaptation in Sri Lanka. I note some of the excellent work that has been done in less complicated pre-COVID times in building environmental and climate change awareness for school children, on waste upcycling, in a tree planting project and a beach cleanup. I hope you will enjoy this webinar series and that the sharing today will better support you as individuals and as part of an alumni group to continue support and advocacy for the importance of community engagement in improving food and water security with the aim of strengthening Sri Lanka's climate resilience. Thank you for this opportunity to open this discussion, and I wish all of you personally and professionally all the best during the difficulties of this pandemic and in the recovered period ahead.
Yes. We thank the Australian High Commission, and I also want to tell you students that we are very privileged because every one of our webinars has an Australian water professional, and you are very lucky because this time round we have Mr. Kanchana Karunaratne, who is a Sri Lankan Australian. So he will speak later, but I'm very pleased to know that he is the son of my head of department when I was teaching in Javadanapura. We will go on to the next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. So that message from Australia, a country which is severely affected by droughts, is very, very important to us. So let's move on. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Misaka for his valuable words, and I hope we'll see him again in another future session. So let me then go to our next speaker. Now, think of a river. It's huge, right? And remind of the last time you took sand out of it to build your house. Now, thinking of the size, the river and the amount of sand, it's very little. But the problem is you took that same amount of sand and I took it, and everyone else in this webinar and everybody in this whole world took that same amount of sand out of those rivers. So imagine the damage. So let me invite Ms. Mudita Priyanvada from the Construction Industry Development Authority to tell us about supply and demand of sand needs. Ms. Mudita, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. So good morning to everyone. So I am Mudita Priyanvada from Construction Industry Development Authority. So I would like to thank, first of all, I would like to thank the staff of Wellas University, especially Department of Export Agriculture, and Ms. Kusum, Dr. Misaka, and the team for giving me this opportunity to elaborate the demand of construction sand in our industry. So first I would like to explain you who we are and what is our role. So you must be knowing that there's a government institution for construction industry called as Construction Industry Development Authority. So it is established under the Construction Industry Development Act number 33 of 2014. the objective of this act is to develop the construction industry of Sri Lanka. How? By regulating, registering, formalizing, standardizing of the activities of construction industry. So under this act, there are 33 functions. So one of the important functions is to promote and encourage the adoption and propagation of new technologies related to environmentally friendly, appropriate, cost-efficient, and affordable innovations. Under this act, we as Construction Industry Development Authority, who is the responsible authority for the construction industry of Sri Lanka, is having an obligation to reduce the sand mining due to the environmental impacts and recommend the suitable alternatives for Sri Lankan construction industry activities. So that is how we have the relationship between the sand mining and the savings, or the sand mining and construction industry. So now I would like to go to the presentation. So our previous speaker, Dr. Misaka, said, think universally and act globally. So do you know how much of sand we are using in construction industry in the world? So if you see, look around your table, you can see there are so many products that contain sand. Maybe your cell phone, maybe your glass, maybe your pen. So even all the items in front of you may have any kind of a sand. So if I go to some statics on sand production, so you can see the tons of sand produced by some of the countries in the world in 2019. So you can see in China, they have produced 190,000 of metric tons for sand. So likewise, there's a huge amount of sand they have excavated from the earth. So if you know the real value, so you know that construction industry is using a lot of sand. The world use of aggregates for concrete is estimated as 25 billion to 29 billion tons of per year for the 2012 alone. So you can see how much of sand we are using as construction industry. If you can't imagine, I would like to give a kind of example. It will be enough. The sand, total sand will be enough, excavated, so total sand will be enough to construct a sand wall of 27 meters high, 27 meters width, sand wall around the equator. So you can see how much sand we are using in the world. Basically, if I come to our country or any of the construction industry, sand is used for ready-mix concrete, precast concrete products, on-site constructions, mainly for house construction, road construction and surfacing. And there are so many activities which we need sand for our final products. So these two figures shows that a road that we are using sand for construction, and the other one is to indicate the government construction projects are the main user of sand required for construction industry. So up to now, I have talking about sand, not the river sand, which needs for our construction activities. But in Sri Lanka, we are using river sand, mainly more than 90% of sand demand is fulfilled by river sand. That is the problem. So in 2017, we have predicted or estimated that 31 millions of meter cubes we need for construction. The chart here shows that it is in Sri Lanka, all the other areas except Western province, all the other areas use 40% of the demand or the supply. In the green area shows that means 60% of the sand supply used by the Western province. So using previous data, we have kind of a prediction up to 2022, the sand demand based on the cement consumption. So we can calculate cement supply, local and imports for these 6 years, and we have calculated that 2013 we need 6 metric tons, millions of metric tons for cement is required. There's a relationship that's saying 3.6 meter cube per metric ton of cement is required to construct. Sand, 3.6 meter cubes per metric ton of cement is required for our construction activities. So then, based on the previous calculation, this total cement requirement supply, we have calculated the sand requirement for the 2013 21.7 millions of meter cubes. But this chart shows, you can see 2012, the permits issued is only 8 millions of meter cubes, 8 millions of meter cube. But if you come here, you can see it is estimated the actual sand requirement is 21.1 millions of meter cubes. That means there's a huge difference in actuals and the requirement, indicating that there's another way of providing sand, that means illegal sand mining. So in construction industry, if you go to statics, the cost in rupees, you can see we are spending millions 11,519 for cement, and sand 6,073 millions. You can see, if you go to all the other items, you can see we are in fourth. The steel, next item, and then we have another item, electrical items, and all the other materials, if you put in a one basket, it will be another, but we cannot consider it as one unit, one item. So then we are coming to the sand, we are spending 6,073 millions of rupees for sand only. So this chart shows that again the same statics. So cement 11%, we are using 6% of the cost required for construction projects for sand. So all the others, you can see we are spending a lot on sand, which we need for construction industry. So based on the same calculations and same data which I explained previously, we have calculated the average annual increase of sand for construction industry is approximately 9.32, because each year 10% of the sand demand will be increased. So just to show you how the sand mining industry in our country. So river sand consumption in 2013, GSMB has explained that 18.7 millions of meter cubes, and demand was 31 millions of meter cubes, and we will be needing in 2022 we will be needing 48.39 millions of meter cube, approximately 50 millions of meter cubes for construction industry. So we have estimated recently that we need 492 millions of meter cubes of rubble, sand 144 millions of meter cubes of sand, and soil 700 meter cubes of millions. So for the construction projects between 21 to 25 for the next 5 years, but we are going to face a very big problem, because now we all know that these natural resources are going to be going to create a huge impact on environmental huge impact on environment. So there are certain alternatives in Sri Lanka at the moment. So offshore sand and manufactured sand. In other countries, they have produced this, the middle photo shows that they have produced a sand brick using plastic bottles. So manufactured sand already available in Sri Lanka. Offshore sand is available in land reclamation. So, but in Colombo, there are certain alternatives which we can consider for our construction activities. So thank you very much. If you got the message from my presentation, that's great. Thank you very much.
So yes, thank you very much, Ms. Mudita. So, Kusum, madam, is Miss Mudita leaving? Does the questions need to come now as well, ma'am?
Mudita, are you leaving now, or can you stay till the end to take your questions? Is there any questions? Mudita?
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
All right. So you will continue to stay, or would you be leaving?
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be here. Yes.
All right. Thank you. So let's go on with the next presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am. So next, let me invite Miss Nimmi Sanjeevani from the Center for Environment Justice to speak about legal issues related to sand mining, because every time, because the sand mining is, remember, it's happening as an illicit operation. So definitely legal issues are gonna come when you break the laws. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you all for giving me this chance to share my experience and insights with you. Let me share my screen. Okay, I'll talk about the legal issues related to sand mining. In my presentation, I will talk about the background of issue a bit, and then I will talk about the legal background, what are the relevant laws related to sand mining, and I will talk about what are the actions and remedies for these issues. And I will mention few court cases at the end of the presentation. So if I got the background of this issue, sorry,
Yes.
sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Yes, Miss Nimmi. Now I think your screen has not been shared. I think because there's another screen. Yes. Okay. Now, yes. Please, can you share it again? Now I think it will work because there was another screen from the previous speaker. That's why I think it didn't.
Can you see it now?
Yes. Yes, we can see it now. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll continue. Let's now look at the background of this issue. As we all know, this is an ongoing issue. There are many negative effects. Dr. Mistake mentioned many of these effects, so I will not explain them here. Anyway, let me show you a few examples from news. Yeah. As you all can see, the first news shows the illegal sand mining happening in Moraga district. This news was in 2020, and the next shows the illegal sand mining happened in Muttur coastal areas in 2018. And also this one shows the illegal sand mining happened in Kirindioya area and Dadroya area. So this is in Nivitigal area. So all as you can see, many illegal sand mining issues are happening everywhere in the country. Now let me get into the legal background of this issue. So I will explain what are the relevant laws related to sand issue in Sri Lanka. Actually, the environment, if we consider the environment first, the main law, prime law in the country to consider and take actions in Sri Lanka is the constitution. Main law is the constitution. So under the Article 27 of the constitution, Article 27, sub-article 14 of the Constitution says, the state shall protect, preserve, and improve the environment for the benefit of the community. So state has the responsibility to protect this environment, including sand, natural resources. So every person in the country has the responsibility to protect, preserve, and protect public property, to combat misuse and also waste of public property. So under Article 28 of this Constitution, it explains every person has the responsibility to protect nature and conserve its riches. So you are students, but you are citizens in the country. So every person in the country has the responsibility to do that. So including you and me have this responsibility. Unfortunately, these are directive principles included in Chapter 6 of the Constitution. However, even though these directive principles cannot be enforceable in front of a court, these are fundamental duties we all have in this country, within the country. And if I go to Chapter 3 of the Constitution, we can find out fundamental rights in the Constitution. So under the right to equality included in Article 12 of the Constitution, we all have equal right, and we can go to Supreme Court of Sri Lanka and we can go file cases against. We can file cases to protect our natural riches, natural resources, to protect them. So now I will jump to our acts, relevant acts related to sand mining. Yeah, before that, I want to give some ideas about the concept related to environment, especially environment. So sustainable development is a concept recognized by environmental law. So we all need development in the country. So we use this sand for our development activities. However, even if we use our natural resources for the development, but it must be sustainable. It must be in a sustainable way. So if we don't use these our natural resources in a sustainable way, we can't protect our natural resources and conserve them for the future generations. So that's why the sustainable development concept is recognized by law. Actually, public trust doctrine is another concept recognized by law. That means the authorities, I mean the state and state parties, responsible authorities has the public trust. They must protect the natural resources in the country on behalf of the for the benefit of the public. So and also precautionary principle. Precautionary principle means before we get into trouble, we must take precautionary actions to prevent such harms to the environment. So these concepts actually are recognized not by the acts or ordinances in the country, but by the court judgments. And also polluter pays principle. Sometimes you may remember the court case came last year, the Vilpattu case. Polluter pays principle was there, and Minister, the former Minister Badutin was responsible under this principle. Polluter pays principle. The polluter must pay for his acts. That's what it says. So, and also intergenerational equity is another concept. It means these natural resources are not for us only. We must protect them, conserve them for our future generations as well. So, however, these concepts and doctrines are recognized by the courts and through court judgments, and however, these are not included in acts or ordinances in the country yet. Now, I will explain what are the relevant acts and authorities in Sri Lanka who is responsible for illegal sand mining and sand mining issues. So basically, we have Geological Survey and Mines Bureau, and GSMB has been established by Mines and Minerals Act number 33 of 1992. So the purpose of this act is to regulate the exploration, mining, transportation, processing, trading, or export of minerals. So this act regulates regulates countries' mining and mining related activities by issuing license. So GSMB has the power to issue 3 types of license. Those are for exploration, mining, and trading. For all 3 licenses shall require transportation license. So if you remember, we had a court case last year, and this present government took an initiative in their first cabinet decision. They decided to take away this transportation license. So we argued in the court, and this is not appropriate. It was not an appropriate action, and I will talk about that court case at the end of this presentation. So in these licenses, there are the quantity of the sand and a period for sand mining and type of minerals must be specified, and also conditions must be included in these licenses. Don't mistake it like that, because like this. I mean, the giving licenses to mine sand mining is regulated by GSME only. So they are not the owners of the sand in this country. Please keep it in mind. I will describe later. So under section 28 of this act, no person shall mine, explore, transport, process, store, or trade any minerals except without a license. So if someone do those things without a license, it shall be a guilty of an offense under this act. And also section 63 of this act list out the offenses. There are 4 offenses: exploring, mining, processing, storing, or transporting, trading, or any type of acts like that. If someone do those acts like without a license, it's an offense. And also, if someone purchases any mineral from a person who is not a license holder, is an offense. And also, if someone knowingly makes a false statement or a fraudulent representation in connection with an application for a license under this act, is also guilty of an offense. These are the actions mentioned in this act. However, let me show the penalty for this illegal sand mining activities. If someone do such things under this act and liable, he shall be liable not less than 50,000 rupees and not exceeding 500,000 rupees. The trial may be before a magistrate court. And also, the police officers in the country are given some powers to act against illegal sand mining. Under 63A subsection 1 of this act, a police officer who has reasonable grounds to believe, reasonable grounds means if he suspects that these are sands mined illegally without a license, it's an offense, and he can seize any mine and arrest without a warrant, with or without a warrant. So the police officers have the power to act against those illegal sand minings in Sri Lanka. And I mentioned the transportation license was removed by a cabinet decision. So if the police officers only can find out illegal sand mining when only transporting. They only find out illegal sand mining. They I mean, not only, but they many times find illegal sand mining by transporting them. So that's if the transportation license was removed, it's a actual it's a very huge it's a actually it's not easy to find out illegal sand mining happening in Sri Lanka. That's why we argued it must not be happen. So if I jump to the next authority we have in Sri Lanka related to natural resources and sand management and conserving natural resources in the country. It's a Central Environment Authority established by National Environment Act. So under this act, Central Environment Authority are given powers to undertake surveys and investigations to such issues. I mean, illegal sand mining issues. So even if there is the license, and if the license are not, even if they are not violating the license, the Central Environment Authority has the power to conduct surveys and find out whether there are issues with nature. I mean, if there are any degradation in environment to the environment, the CEA has the power, and the CEA can take actions to prevent those mining activities. So the CEA is responsible, and the CEA has the power to manage natural resources in the country for management and conservation, soil conservation, environmental management. So they can take actions for precautionary actions. They can take precautionary actions, and also they can take legal actions against such illegal sand mine or in Sri Lanka. So I will now talk about the actions that you can take as the citizens in this country. So if you find out any illegal sand mining or any sand mining issue, I mean, even if there is a license holder, and if the license, if sand mining in the area is causing many environmental damages to the area, and it's affecting to the human life of the area, you can complain to these relevant authorities. So you can complain to Gram Niladhari in the village, and also medical officer MOH in the area, and also you can complain to police in the area. So we get so many complaints from everywhere in the country. Actually, we get 5 to 7 complaints in each year. So relating to sand mining, and you can complain to us as well. If we get any complaints like that, we take actions to prevent such activities in the areas. And also you can complain to Divisional Secretariat, Pradeshya Sabha, District Secretariat, and also Central Environment Authority, Geological Survey and Mines Bureau as well. So even if you have done many, you have complained to many, all of these institutions and authorities, if they are not taking enough, if they are not taking enough actions, you can after you complain to all these institutions, you can go to courts and file an actions against these relevant authorities and the parties who are doing illegal sand mining activities. Actually, I mean, illegal sand mining is doing without an license, but even when there is a license, and the environment is there are bad causes to the environment, environment areas, you can complain and go to courts. Now I will explain what are the judicial remedies you can get. You can have in the country. So under public interest litigation, we call these are public interest litigations because if the because these are the actions and litigations were taken on behalf of the public at large. Therefore, we call these are public interest litigations. So there are three types of public interest litigations we can explain. First one is fundamental right cases. Anyhow, fundamental right cases can be filed in Supreme Court in Sri Lanka only. Apart from that, you can complain to Ombudsman in the country, or else you can do complaints to Human Rights Commission as well. So some people think, and it's true, and this is not an easy. This procedure is not an easy one, and also it's an expensive. So I suggest you to do the not. I suggest you not to go to Supreme Court first. I suggest you to go to Human Rights Commission and Ombudsman for fundamental right cases first. So and also someone can file writ cases against the public authorities if they are not taking appropriate actions and according to the powers given to them. If they are not taking actions, and if they are silent, and if they are not doing their responsibilities and duties, we can go to court and complain by way of a writ case. There are various writ cases. We can get a mandamus order. Mandamus order means if the public officer is doing an ultra virus action. If ultra virus action means if he is acting without given power by a law, it's an ultra virus action. So we can get an order from Court of Appeal. And also certiorari writ means if some state responsible authorities, responsible officer has taken any decision without any power given by law, it says we can get a certiorari writ against him. And also prohibition writ means we can get a prohibition to do illegal sand mine if there is happening illegal sand mining, and if we can get a prohibition, we can prohibit the activity by way of a writ case. So usually we go to Court of Appeal to file writ cases, and also there is public nuisance cases, and we can go file public nuisance cases in the magistrate courts. So these are the judicial remedies we can take against sand mining issues in Sri Lanka. Especially, these are not only for sand mining issues. Every environmental issue in Sri Lanka, we can take these judicial actions against environmental issues. So,
Miss Nimmi, sorry for the interruption.
Yeah.
Can we wrap up, please, Miss Nimmi, because we are running out of time. We are very short on time. So,
yes.
So,
Yes, thank you very much. I wrap up it now. Yes.
Okay.
So recently we filed. It's not recently. It's in 2016. There is a court order given by Supreme Court against issuing license to sand mining in Daduro area. So now no one can issue. I mean, GSMB or any related authority can't issue any mining license to mine do mining activities in that area. And also in this court decision, I mentioned it earlier, we Center for Environmental Justice went to court can got an order against the cabinet decision, and the court ordered the IGP, Inspector General of Police, to check the transportation license, and transportation license were not removed. So that's what I have. That's what I have with me to share. And also, I am open to your questions now, and you can ask any questions related to my presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Timi. So guys, the general idea, don't wait until the sand miners or whatever the people do a mistake, and don't wait till they do a mistake and legally frame them. Do your research in a way that you can invent new things so that these people can work within the boundaries of law. So next, I would like to invite Ms. Kusumatha Korala to talk us about the community issues related to illicit sand mining, because it's the community who needs the sand, and then it's the community who mines the sand, and then it's at the end, they're the ones who suffer the problems. So Ms. Kusum, over to you, ma'am. And I'll share your presentation as well now, ma'am.
Thank you, Sanoj. I'm also just shared a document with Ms. Nisan Satla about sand mining in Dadruoya, on which we have been doing research for the last, I would, 10 years. And the current situation came in the Sunday Times paper a couple of weeks ago. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can see that the country that you are going to inherit is fraught with many problems. I'm going very, very fast because we really need to listen to Mr. Kanchana Karnaratna and his reflections. But I think that if you watch the news or if you read the newspapers, you have a very good idea of what is going to happen, what is happening in sand mining. Let me tell you that sand mining in Dadruoya is happening again. And let me also tell you that the highest place in Sri Lanka where I found sand mining is actually Agarapatana Nuwara, and there was a big board saying that he is doing his sand mining with permission. So you see that there are lots of issues that you need to tackle, and you are all over the country, I know. So maybe you are observing this in your own right. Next, please. When we had this Women, Water and Climate Tackling the Challenges conference last year, we had one webinar. We had to go, of course, we had to go virtual. We had one webinar on the sand mining of Dadruoya. And based on that, I must be happy to tell you there are lots of people who are taking on this issue of sand mining. We wanted to do this activity called Voice of Water, which we call Jala Yatra, and ensuring water security. One of the most important points is that we look after the threats to water. And one of the major threats, or if the major threat to water, is sand mining, because it is coming up in all kinds of different ways. Next, please. Now, you think of sand mining along riverbeds, but what is happening more and more is that we are having land masses away from riverbeds, digging up what we call Goda Valley. This is the old old river tracks, which have, now the river has changed its course. But as you can see, this excavation is going to threaten, I think here it was about 60 acres of extremely good coconut land, and as the Department of Export Agriculture, this would be very, very important for you to look at. Next, please. We have gone into different ways of communicating about sand mining. So please, when you go to the websites, you will find little videos and video clips about sand mining, and this is one of the first that we did in Dadruoya. Next, please. the loss of livelihood which is happening due to sand mining is being protested and contested up and down the rivers of and the other non-river sites of this country. This is, I think, Madampe. Now, this community is being affected by losing the coconut land. They all lose their livelihood. Next, please. And you can see that, you know, it is men and women. If you see this clip, you would have seen this on TV, you would understand that the different ways in where the loss of livelihood is also going to impact on social losses. We talked about groundwater drawdown and its impact, but correspondingly, we are going to see social issues drawdown. Communities are losing livelihoods. People are going into migration, families are being broken up, children leave school and go to sand mining. Now, you know, at the end of this pandemic, I don't know how many of these children will go back to school, or whether we are going to see the largest amount of dropouts we have ever seen in the history of education in Sri Lanka. Next, please. Again, you can see with these pictures, what we are seeing is the loss of livelihood and the loss of also export earnings. And that is something which I think that you need to look at from the Department of Export Agriculture. Who has researched the loss of, for instance, coconut and the impacts on our export earnings? Who has looked at the loss of spawning grounds along the rivers and the loss of biodiversity and also maybe endemic species? These are all themes that you need to look at. Next, please. Somebody talked about, you know, groundwater. This is groundwater, the water that they were using for their daily necessities. Now it has become this muddy yellow water which nobody could drink, and that is what he says in this video. Next, please. The impact of women is really critical, because we have seen this, that women are the major victims in losing drinking water, spending more time on accessing water, not being able to look after families, not being able to earn through their small, slender livelihoods, money to look after the school children's, you know, exam fees, pens and pencils, the small the items that they were contributing. Because for the women on Sri Lanka, it is most important that women have educated children, and this is something that we have been very proud of, and we need to continue. So next, please. I'm going very fast because a lot of these document items are also there in the documents which are online. You know, we have written papers. So the long-term implications, I have looked at all this and let me remind you, as Dr. Misaka Hettiarachchi said, all this is going to be intensified by climate change. Because if you have longer droughts, and we know that one of the impacts of climate change is that the dry areas are becoming drier and the wet areas are becoming wetter. So if you look at some of these places like, you know, Madampe, Northwestern Province, it is now, we call it an intermediate zone, but it is, parts of it is becoming a dry zone. And the other important thing is the loss of social cohesion. When a country loses its social security, its social cohesion, we are being slowly pushed into social tensions, which affects our national security. So our loss of water security will also lead to loss of social security and national security. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah, what can we do? We need to have an integrated, no, sorry, you skipped one. Okay, thanks. We need to look at integrated water resource management for national planning. Right now, we are, the major problem, not only in Sri Lanka, but all over, is that we are all operating in silos. We need to add this to university curriculum, and this is something that we are going to take up in this series of activities, which are going to maybe go into a very high level webinar. We need to understand the ground level institutional coherence, like what would be the difference if a community is informed when the GSMB gives a permit for sand mining. That if that is made one of the prior conditions. Community engagement and citizen science, we have done a lot of citizen science program. You know, we think that science is something which happens in universities. Citizen science is now come to such a level that even big institutions like IHE Delft have MScs on citizen science. So community engagement is really important. And the next is, which has been reviewed by the other speakers, is we have to look at our construction methods. Do we have to have so much of sand, or is there other methods that we can minimize and be more effective in our use of this important development resource? So development plans for a country has to be about the resource availability of that country. It's not the Western province sucking up everything of sand, the 60% that Ms. Mudita referred to, and leaving water insecurity in the periphery. Next, please. Thank you very much for your active participation. I hope that you will all go on to become influencers about your own water security. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kusum. So guys, if you really want to be an influence, if you really want to have an impact on the society, if you want to make your research have an impact on the society, I'm sure you don't need more clues. And I hope and I believe Ms. Kusumata Korala and Net W Water will for surely aid you in your future endurances if you want to do, if you want to further advance in this field. So thank you very much, Ms. Kusum. So now let's move on to our final speaker for the day. Now, at the end, it all comes down to one thing: water security. It could be agricultural sciences, it could be aquatic sciences, it could be animal sciences. No matter what, it's all about water security. So now, let me invite Mr. Kanchana Karunaratne from Marston Jacob Associates, Australia, to address this gathering.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Hello, everyone, and thanks very much for inviting me to speak with you and present today. I'll just share my screen, and I hope all of you can see that now.
Yes, yes, we can see. Yes.
Okay, great. I've lost your screen, but I think that's okay. Right, so very quickly, I wanted to sort of cover off a few items that relate to the prior discussions, as well as some of the sort of reflections broadly related to water security, and also the understanding of managing private and public benefits and outcomes. And I think that's what it's sort of a key element that we are capturing here, is that there are benefits and outcomes, both costs and benefits, from a private and public perspective that need to be managed. And that sort of public perspective includes both the environment and social outcomes, as well as previously mentioned. So my sort of some of my reflections relate to where the thinking currently is in the Australian context, and some of the frameworks and sort of decision-making approaches that are being used in the Australian context to sort of, I guess, balance fairness, if you like, between private and public outcomes. Because there's a key awareness that, you know, economic growth and increasing net GDP and so forth is a key outcome that governments are seeking. And in society, some of these growth initiatives are led by private investors. However, there's also a keen awareness that as that private investment and activity increases, it may come at a cost, both to societies where social outcomes are not met, and also cost to environmental outcomes, which then goes on to have the sort of intergenerational impacts that, again, previously had been mentioned, that are not sort of captured in some of the short-term decisions. So again, in the Australian context, you know, there's a continued awareness that everything is connected. And that's not new. That's a very, you know, we've known for a very long time that both social and sort of human actions are intricately linked. Human activities linked to natural systems, and we are sort of part of this one ecosystem. Sort of what's emerging now is this sort of continued understanding or emergence of the concept of circularity. So certainly energy systems and water systems, again, that's been there for a very long time, where particularly renewable energy and so forth has been there for a very long time. In Australia, which is again a very, very dry climate, we have experienced droughts for a very long time. Recycling and reusing water systems, particularly in the urban context, is an important and emerging thing. And the sort of latest thinking is this now moving into the idea of circular economy. So I think, I forget, so apologies for not remembering the name, the lady who presented on the sand. In construction, sort of in Australia, there's a lot of research and thinking going into reuse of materials. So sort of understanding material flows, where you can replace naturally mined products with recycled products, including sand, to sort of other materials. That's a key thing. In fact, my honest thesis was in looking at, and I think this is done all across the world, in using fly ash, which is a byproduct of coal firing back into construction of cement bricks, which again is commonly done thing. And the last couple of dot points, I think, sort of underpinning all of this is this increased public awareness and saying that there is a demand made by the public and holding accountability of those entities and investors, sort of entities from both the public, sort of state-owned enterprises, as well as large investors such as mining companies. There is a higher public awareness of their activities and the impact of their activities, and a demand that they are doing the right thing by community. That's sort of a key thing that's emerging in the latest thinking. Very quickly, just to show you in terms of how aware Australia is in a sort of broader context of water, what this shows you, and again, this information is available from the Australian Bureau of Meteorology. It's a very good resource for anyone interested in water. Australia has a very sort of a long history of keeping very good records with regards to land and water, and I can pass on that link if anybody's interested. But what it's basically showing you is that, on trend in Australia, it's never going to be the same again. We just continue to get drier and drier climates, and the public is more and more acutely aware of how critical sort of efficient use of water and efficient management of catchments is. And so that will never go back to what it was. So we've now sort of hit a how do you say, a step change in what we understand in terms of our dry climate. A little bit about, again, moving on from what are the current expectations and understandings in terms of decision making. There are sort of updated frameworks, if you like, that are being used to try and understand and try and encourage decision makers to sort of use a robust approach in making decisions. So sort of things like what I've sort of put here, again, this is sort of generally touching on accepted frameworks and elements that should be considered, considering a large amount of options or a long range of options, having transparency, being consultative. So that's really coming up to say that you're actually consulting the community, both from a social perspective and also environmental perspective, to ensure that what you're doing, the impacts of what you're doing are considered. That your approach has some sort of a systematic or integrated approach in how you sort of seek to invest or design a system. And that could be anything from a supply chain. So for example, in sand, where the broader impacts of, say, mining in a particular location is thought of in a systematic sense, not just in terms of fulfilling a particular short-term need. And the other is that, your plans are sort of adaptive. So again, these align to these large-scale infrastructure or interventions that have broader impacts beyond simply a short time frame or a short area or sort of a constrained area from a spatial point of view. So as I mentioned, just on the right, a couple of points around, again, public engagement has become a key part of these decision-making frameworks. The regulators and their frameworks seek evidence to show that these decision makers, and particularly whether you're in private or a public realm, that you are using these robust frameworks to make decisions. You've considered the costs and benefits. And then it also does rely on an informed public. And I think Kusum touched on this earlier about saying that there is a sort of a, how do you say, you have to reach critical mass in terms of your understanding of knowledge, and the public has to be informed. And this is this sort of systematic or iterative approach to continuously growing your knowledge base and understanding both the environmental and social impacts. And I guess continued research as well to sort of raise that awareness so that you can be informed in this process, or you can make an informed input into this process. It also does rely on the capacity and willingness of the responsible agency. So that's another sort of key thing in this. And then also understanding the governance arrangements, or having robust governance.
Look, I can't do anything. I'm in a meeting. You call that lady
another framework that we can apply is that there's a few layers you can think through. So there's sort of the technical, economic, internal, governance, regulatory, and policy. And really, again, these sorts of frameworks allow you to think through the different elements that are impacted, or to sort of segment your decision making, so you can consider either costs or benefits and the impact at each of these levels. So from a technical and economic point of view, and also consider how the sort of governance, regulatory, and policy aligns with those sort of technical, economic, and internal considerations. The sort of key point here that I've put in the sort of off to the side is that continuous learning and development is key. So because your knowledge and understanding of systems ultimately feeds in to all of those other considerations. So in other words, all the way down to policy, it's fed in, or the key input is this understanding of both systems from a technical perspective, but also environmental and community perspective. So that's key. Again, just a basic sort of framework. I've brought in a framework that we quite readily use from in our sort of water management projects, sort of considering costs and benefits. So the key message here is that you are looking not just at your direct costs and benefits, but broader costs and benefits, which include environmental and social implications. So if you look at it from a water perspective, the direct costs are, your infrastructure costs from a capital expenditure and operational expenditure point of view. But you might have broader indirect costs and indirect benefits, say, for example, in upstream catchments or downstream receiving waterways, that you should also consider. Also with social and other sort of, for example, economic impacts to the community that might be impacted, that should also be considered. And similarly, on the benefit side, you have direct, indirect, and externality costs and benefits as well. So, for example, in the Australian context, again, we're looking at quantifying greenhouse gas emissions, benefits on improving social amenity, waterways, biodiversity, and resilience, and so forth. So, as much as possible, these frameworks and processes require the sort of the actors, if you like, or the people who are making these investments to consider these both from a quantitative and qualitative point of view as much as possible. So there are a couple of the sort of frameworks or the ways to think about using the Australian context. So again, this is how the current frameworks have evolved and the sort of latest thinking in this space. It's certainly not saying that it's perfect, and it is an iterative approach where we sort of continuously improve these as we know more. So the next couple of slides, I'll just use a couple of examples that have happened recently where sort of these sorts of frameworks, and also particularly that understanding of the public knowledge and the public backlash, if you like, to certain decisions that have been made, has changed the course of some of these investments or directions. This is a very recent one in New South Wales, where a very large multinational miner, South 32, sought to extend a coal mining exercise. And we actually worked on this project on behalf of the New South Wales state government. And the mining company has a license within a water catchment where they were seeking to extend their mining exercises and sought to essentially pay their way. And again, within the legal frameworks, they had that allowance. So it was sort of, they were not doing anything illegal. They were looking to offset the cost that they would incur on the water license by paying paying effectively a water entitlement offset. And we were involved in sort of saying, if you were to pay that offset, what would the value of that offset be? The Department of Environment, the State Department, initially actually looking at the sort of framework and again, going through that process that I sort of outlined earlier, initially approved that additional mining license. And what happened after that was that there was an independent inquiry raised through public objection. So even though from a sort of a regulatory perspective that this was approved, there was a separate independent investigation that then said there would be irreparable damage if this was to occur, and then that mine extension was actually rejected. So in this instance, the independent inquiry was actually led by the public objection to that initial license. So it's quite interesting. And now it's still in the courts. It hasn't been resolved. South 32 is now again raising an objection to that original, the rejection. But it is interesting to see that this process is flowing through, that even though from a regulatory point of view that they could be granted a license, that the public objection or the public view was enough to actually raise an independent review to at least halt this. Another more recent example is also, I don't know whether this also made the news in Sri Lanka or not, but quite recently this has been a huge issue in Australia, where Rio Tinto, another large miner, destroyed one of the sort of oldest known indigenous artifacts, or a cave called the Jukan Gorge. Again, this resulted in a huge impact to this mining company. If you look at the history of how it occurred, and they sort of encountered, or they went through a large investigation, both internally at the mining company as well as an independent investigation. And you could argue, if you look at the detail, that they followed due process. In other words, a mining company as large as this, they work by essentially modifying the natural ground, getting their correct environmental approvals and so forth, and also getting approvals from the indigenous owners where required, to say certain areas they must protect, certain areas they are allowed to destroy by virtue of carrying out their mining activities. Now, you could debate whether they followed due process or not, and certainly some of the documents that are available in the independent inquiry might suggest that they have done their due diligence. However, what ended up happening was that there was again a public outcry that they had not followed the correct process, and also that as a large investor in the area, that they are socially responsible for, or there is a sort of an ethical responsibility for them to ensure that they are doing the right thing. So there's also this sort of power imbalance, that the indigenous communities are perhaps nowhere near as powerful as a large, powerful miner, and that the onus is on them to ensure that they are doing the right thing. So ultimately, they stopped, and you can see by the images here that the original sort of condition of the mine, the cave, was, with the vegetation and so forth around it, and they actually carried out some explosions and destroyed the cave in its original condition. It resulted in quite a significant impact to the mining company, as well as sort of a loss of their social license to operate. And I think that's a key thing here, in that there is an expectation both from the public and also from the investors. So Rio Tinto is a publicly listed company. There's an expectation that they will act in the right manner with respect to the environment and with respect to the public. So for example, here it resulted in the CEO being sacked. There was a board inquiry, and actually a short loss of their share value momentarily. Again, iron ore prices took up as China started to buy more iron ore, so that was a short-term impact. But there was a large ripple effect in the way they sort of dealt with this issue. And you can see on their website, they see this as a breach of their values. So they're not talking about whether they did the right thing or not. They're saying, we apologize unreservedly for what has happened. And this is a large-scale mining company that has a revenue in the order of $50 billion a year. And, it was huge. This was on the national sort of news, and massive impacts internally where they had a wholesale sort of restructure of their management. The CEO lost his job and so forth. So that's kind of the sort of power of I guess, the public view, and also sort of holding the large companies and sort of investors in the community to account. Not to say that, you know, they do not have a place. Certainly, for example, in Western Australia, there are probably 3 or 4 mining companies that play a huge part in ensuring that the economy stays strong. But again, they have to strike that balance, the balance between the public good and the private good. So I might say a very quick last one. So if you, I put a few links here. If you go to the EPA website, you can see a lot of the proceedings where this is an example from the Victorian Environmental Protection Authority. Very, very frequently they take anyone who sort of breaks these environmental protection laws, they take them to court, and there's a publicly listed ongoing list of court proceedings that you can access. So it's a sort of a very, very common thing. Again, that strength of the regulators or the strength of the organizations to hold people to account. So to finish up a couple of insights and trends that we're seeing, again, private and public entities who operate are increasingly expected to demonstrate a prudent process. And, we're seeking evidence of that. And the public input is increasingly important. Not that it wasn't important before, but particularly in this time of social media and access to sort of digital communication techniques, there's no excuse for saying, it's very cheap to engage in do mass communications and engage large communities of people to survey people. So there is no excuse for not doing that, in the current context. Entities seek to maintain this social license to operate, and that's a really key thing because people have a voice. So again, in this context of sort of social media where people can speak out, you can publish an article on your own. You can put an Instagram or a Facebook or a Twitter post to say you have seen something that is not appropriate. You can report non-compliance. So that's maintaining the social license to operate is very important. It can result in changes to governance, board composition, and restructure, as we've seen in Rio Tinto. The last couple of points, these are sort of my insights, that it is important to take an iterative and an adaptive approach. This certainly, there is no one solution that occurs once. We have to keep doing this and keep asking the same question. If we don't get the answer the first time, or if we don't get it right the first time, it's important to not give up and sort of keep building on our knowledge. And I think that's the culture of sort of scientific learning, of research and academia, is to say that, you're building upon the knowledge of whoever came last, and you're sort of adding to the knowledge, adding to the common knowledge base. And I think that's really important. And the second dot point sort of talks to that as well, is that a key part of it is to sort of improve and increase your research and your knowledge base as you go, because that technical understanding feeds into all of the other processes. And very, very lastly, that change is not easy, and improving things is not easy. So we have to sort of persist and stay committed and continue. So I might end there. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Kanchana Karnaratne. Indeed, change is not easy, but persistence is the key. We cannot turn the system, turn all the operations over again, but what we can do is modify our operations in order to retain sustainability. And why should we do that? Why should we retain sustainability? Because if we lose it, the whole thing, the whole world is not going to be sustainable. So thank you very much, Mr. Kanchana Karnaratne, again. Ms. Kusum and Mrs. Sansala, does the time allow us to go for a Q&A session?
Yeah, that's the problem. What shall we do? Actually, the participant number was about 100 by 11. Most of them left by 11. So actually, after the Dr. Misaka's presentation, the questions are okay. And in the chat, I can't see any more questions actually.
Madam,
may I suggest? may I
Yes.
suggest that we, you see, this is a lot of food for thought for any person who has not been in this debate, especially Mr. Kanchana Karunaratne's presentation, I think has given us some kind of a way forward. So why don't we leave it at this? And I think that, you know, you as the university academia might want to pick this up and see how you can take this forward. Let us go into closure because I know that you have restrictions. And shall we just carry on, Ms. Ansala?
Okay, Ms. Kusum. Actually, without much taking time, just to talk about the concluding remarks, I just brief, starting from the today's session by 9 a.m. So Professor Vasanta, Professor the head of the department, and the Professor Saman Herat, the dean of the faculty, they shared their thoughts and they gave us a good inception for this webinar. And then Mr. Dr. Misaka, and later on Miss Priyangvada, and then Miss Nimi, and again our Miss Kusum and Mr. Kanchana from Australia. They shared their thoughts and they gave so much of inputs to think about this impacts of sand mining on water security. They basically discussed the impacts on sand mining towards water security, supply and legal issues, and the social issues actually. And finally, the experiences from Australia, and they are the role of us, the future role of us, you, the undergraduates of OLS University today, and you are the future of the country and in the world actually. Your role to think about this, especially we'll go ahead with development. So from all these speakers, it's obvious that we need sustainable development together with sustainable sand mining. I think with that, I conclude my session, and then I invite our Mr. Sanoj, actually finally a technology and value addition degree program student, and he's the current president of the Agro Club. Over to you, Sanoj, to deliver the word of thanks.
So thank you very much, madam. So Mrs. Sansal and Miss Kusum. So let me deliver this vote of thanks in a very meaningful way, because river sand mining is somewhat very personal to me, because my grandmother's house is in Avissavella. There are beautiful rivers. I remember when I was small, I could go there and walk across. There's a river there. I could walk across the river with no problem. But last year when I went there was not even a river bank in that river. So that's the severity of this problem. So let me conclude with the word of thanks. So first of all, let me thank our Dean, Professor Saman Herat, and our Head of Department, Professor Vasanta Senaviratne, for their guidance to make these kind of events true. And of course, to our resource persons, Dr. Misaka, Mr. Kanchana, Ms. Mudita, Ms. Nemi, and Ms. Kusum, for their valuable thoughts, for their valuable words to give us more knowledge on this broad subject. And of course, Mrs. Sansala, who put everything, all this together in a very short period of time. And last but not least, the gathering, everybody who joined to this session, to the Agro Club and to the Aqua Club, and also on behalf of the president of Aqua Club, Mr. Indunil, let me convey my thanks. So let us meet again in another, hopefully in another meaningful and another fruitful session in the future. And again, let me end with this note. Guys, we are the ones who can make the change. And these are the people, the ones who you saw today are the ones who can help us to make that change. So get use of those opportunities, get connected with them, and make the change and be the true meaningful UWU. So thank you very much again on behalf of the Aqua Club and Agro Club. So thank you very much. We'll hope we'll meet again very soon. Thank you.
Yeah, Sanoj, if possible, if others are also willing, we'll have a kind of a snapshot, a screenshot.
Yes, yes.
Opening by switching on all the videos camera of all the participants remaining at the moment. Right, I think it's better.
Yes, so guys, if we can switch on our cameras so that we can.
Sanoj, you better lead it.
Yes, madam, I'll do that. So everybody who participated, who's sailed there up to now, I invite all of you to switch the cameras on.
With that, stop recording, right? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Recording stopped.
So the ones who hasn't switched their cameras on yet, guys, can we all please switch the cameras on so that we can have the final snapshot? Okay, we'll go ahead. We'll go ahead. So, okay, guys, say cheese then. Thank you very much, everyone. So yes, Mrs. Ansela, again.
Yes, thank you again, especially Ms. Kusum for organizing this webinar and helping us in many ways. And again, Sanoj and all the speakers, starting from our head, Dean, and all the other distinguished speakers. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day and stay safe.